I'm just keeping it super practical today, and I'm going to talk about 10 small habits that have really changed my life for the better when it comes to minimalism. So, these may be things that help you. Some of them might surprise you. Some of them you might be like, well, duh, those are just like basic minimalism. But I always feel really inspired when I hear what's working for other people. And so I thought today I would share some things that are working for me. The first thing that has really helped me with keeping my number of possessions low and just sort of limiting the number of things I'm bringing into my space is waiting to buy things. The way I phrase this when I'm out and about is that I'm trying to make fewer spontaneous buying decisions. Now, I am allowing myself some breathing room and space and grace for situations where it's like, okay, I will never actually be able to find this specific thing again. So for example, we went to an art fair a couple of weeks ago. It's like one of those street vendor fair things. And I did buy something from one of the stalls because I was like, well, I'm very possibly not going to be here again, buying from this person again. And so I wanted to support their small business, and that's fine. But if I'm walking around Target and I see something that I've never seen before, it's not something I've been thinking about needing or buying, and I go, oh, I just really want to buy that, thing. Okay, slow your roll. At least go home, think about it for a few days, and then I can go back if I need to. The nice thing about this habit is that it is really helping me to be more intentional about what I buy. I think that I have a tendency to just sort of see something that I want and buy it and sort of get that dopamine rush from it. But then those are the very purchases that end up cluttering my life and that I end up maybe regretting later because I didn't really put a lot of thought into them. I wasn't thinking about, what I really want to be doing with my life, how I want to be spending my money, where I was going to put it, what I was going to get rid of so I have space for it. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just focusing on the joy of buying a new thing. And while that's okay sometimes, if that's how I'm doing most of my buying, I'm going to end up with too many things. I'm going to have to just be always constantly decluttering a ton of things. So that's been a really nice change for me. I think it was made possible by the second thing, which is to have no buy weeks every once in a while. So basically what these are is instead of being limited by the amount of money that I can spend, because I have a spending account, instead of being limited by that, I limit myself to just not buying anything for a week. If something comes up in my brain and I'm like, oh, I really wanted to buy that and I have the money, that's okay, that's fine. I can buy it, once the no buy week is over, but I can't buy it during that week. And what this has really taught me is that there's a lot of things that I think I need and that I want, but that I can really, truly live without, at least for a very long time. There's a tumbler that I really would like to buy from a local coffee shop. And it's like one of those 40-ounce things with a straw so I can drink more water and be more hydrated. And yeah, I would enjoy having one of those, but every time that I think about buying it, it's on a no buy week. And I don't really think about or decide to go buy it the rest of the time. And so that tells me okay, at some point I probably will buy it because it keeps coming up and I remember it and I really want it, but it's probably not urgent, right? And then there have been things I know for a fact, I can't name any of them because I've forgotten them, but there have been things that I thought, oh, I really want to buy that on a no buy week. And then by the time the week is over, I've forgotten about it. And I'm so glad that I didn't spend the money on it or bring it into my house because I don't need it. The third thing that we've done that has been absolutely crucial for me is making it easy to throw things away and recycle them. So for a while, it was easy for us to throw things away, but it wasn't easy to recycle. But I would get ecological guilt because I want to be recycling. I want to be doing my part for the planet. We have recycling as part of our taxes. And so it's okay, I really want to recycle, but then the cans and the bottles and everything would just end up kind of sitting on my counter because it wasn't easy. I had to take it all the way outside, dump it in the recycling bin. So my husband is very smart. And I said, hey, this keeps happening and I'm sorry. And I feel bad when I throw it away, but I also feel bad for leaving it out and cluttered because this is not what I'm trying to do. And so he said, well, why don't we get a recycling bin? And we found a place for it. And so now I can just put my recycling easily in that bin. And then every once in a while, you take the bin out and you empty it into the big bin outside. And that has made it much, much easier for me to recycle things. And as a result, it's made our space a lot neater. I think this also goes for like things that you have to donate, because you're probably not going to the donation place like every week. At least I know I'm not. If I was doing a major declutter, I definitely would go more often. And actually, as part of my short series, which I will link to, I have been going more often because I've been decluttering more things. But I actually have a space in our house where it's okay to leave those donation things if I'm not planning on going to the thrift store anytime soon. And then once they get to a certain amount, I load them up, I put them in the car, and then I just take them. I think the beauty of this habit is realizing that, like, yeah, you will have waste as part of a minimalist lifestyle, but letting that waste accumulate is like the opposite of what you want to do. You want it to have a place to go so that it can get out of your house. And so whether that is creating a designated like donation area in your house, whether that is getting a bin for your recycling, whether it is something else, maybe putting a trash can in every room, like making it easy for you to take care of those things that you no longer need is a small thing to do that will make like a huge difference for your ability to maintain the minimalist lifestyle and to keep your clutter in check. The fourth thing that I've started implementing actually this year after doing a digital detox is just limiting the amount of time that I spend on social media. And if you haven't done this, I think that you will be pleasantly surprised in terms of like how much less you want to buy things. Like obviously I still see marketing messages. There are billboards, there are commercials, I still watch YouTube. Like there are plenty of places that people advertise to me, but I'm not seeing the same number of things, because I feel like even on like Instagram or TikTok, you might not be watching an ad, but you're still watching a video that somebody is making about a product or service. For me, having that just constant inundation of marketing messages, it gave me all these ideas for things I wanted to buy. And I had a lot of FOMO about like, oh no, what if I'm just completely doing my life wrong and this person has figured out the solution? I mean, I know that sounds a little bit weird when I say it that way, but that is how marketing tricks our brains into buying things that we don't need. And so I'm just really limiting the amount of time I was spending on my phone, on social media, has really, really helped the amount of things that I am trying to bring into my home. It's also cut down the number of purchases that I'm making all the time, because I'm not constantly thinking like, oh yeah, I see that thing online and I gotta buy it. The fifth habit is something I'm still working on, to be honest, but it's been specifically practicing minimalism in the kitchen. Now, I will admit that I am not great at this. I love a variety of food, but recently, I have been trying to sort of minimize the number of ingredients that I need to buy for recipes, just focusing on simple ingredients, simple recipes that don't take like a ton of ingredients, maybe a little bit more fresh food, but also like when I'm planning out my recipes for the week, making sure that like, okay, if I'm using half a pack of tomatoes one day, I have a recipe that takes the other half so that I sort of minimize the waste and I don't have to buy a bunch of different things all the time. And this seems like something that maybe would be intuitive to me as a minimalist, but I think for some reason I had compartmentalized like the kitchen is the kitchen and the rest of the house is the rest of the house. You know, the pantry is one thing, the rest of the house is minimalist. And so just really integrating that thought process and mindset into every aspect of my life in ways that help me, like, right? Like, obviously I don't want to be too extreme and go like, okay, I can only cook with 5 things. You know, I've got like basically the capsule pantry, although that could be kind of fun. I mean, depending on what you put in it, but just really focusing on using up my ingredients, also being creative and learning to make things like bread and desserts and things like that from scratch so that I don't always have to be buying like mixes and pre-made things. So yeah, I mean, I think that you could argue that that's maybe more of a slow living hobby or an underconsumption hobby, but I think that like really bringing the minimalist mindset into the kitchen has been helping me a lot recently, and it's helped me really streamline what I have in my cupboards and my fridge and just made the whole process a lot less overwhelming. It also makes it easier to hand off. Like, I don't cook every single meal in our house, and so if my husband is going to cook, but I've planned the menu and done the grocery shopping, it's a lot easier to just sort of say, okay, here's the recipe, and let him go at it if there are fewer things for him to need to find. Number 6 is intentionally trying to spend more money on experiences rather than things. Now, obviously, you need both. You can't just live on experiences. You do sometimes need to buy physical things. And that's not wrong, but I've sort of gotten to this point in my life, and I feel like I've gotten here very, very quickly, where I've realized that like the experience of spending time with people, doing things together, I would much rather spend my disposable income on that than on like possessions that I'm going to look at maybe a few times, that are going to maybe get in my way, that may crowd my house. Like, I want to be very intentional about the things that I bring into my space. And I also want to be intentional about the way that I spend my time. I want to have experiences with friends and family and the people that I love. And so just sort of routing some of that money, spending it elsewhere, has been a small thing, but it's made a huge difference. Number 7 is learning to say no in a loving way. And this goes for like myself and others. I think that something that living simply helps you do is really focus on what's important in your life. It helps you realize that there are limits. There are limits to your time and energy. There are limits to your budget. There are limits to the amount of things that your physical space can hold. And all of those things are somewhat related to each other, right? Like, if you are overstuffed on the amount of things in your space, then, you're going to have less time and energy for other things that really matter to you. You're going to also have less money. If, you're like kind of spending too much time and energy, like more than you really have on a week-to-week basis, from week to week to week, and you're overwhelmed and exhausted and just sort of running on fumes, well, then you're probably going to be more likely to spend money on things that you don't need, to make, random purchasing decisions to try to get that dopamine rush. And so learning to say no for me has been really, really helpful. Like, in a loving way, in a kind way, but to myself, to say like, okay, I don't think that you actually need to buy that thing right now. I don't think that that's what this is about. Or to say to somebody who wants me to do something, or, wants me to cram one more thing into my schedule, to say, you know what, I can't do that this week. Let's look at a time later. And I just feel like being able to set those simple boundaries around like my time and around what I'm purchasing and around how much money I'm spending has freed up a lot of space mentally, emotionally, but also physically in my life, so that I can actually live it to the fullest and enjoy those moments like I was just talking about earlier. Number 8, this one I really, really like. And it's something that I've started implementing recently. When you are going through your life and something keeps coming up and you keep having to move it and you don't know where it goes and you don't have space for it, my new rule for myself that I've been practicing is if I have to keep moving something out of my way, I need to either A, figure out where its home is and put it there, or B, declutter it. So then that really forces me quickly to go like, okay, I don't want to get rid of this thing. So where do I put it? And if there's no space for it, then what do I need to get rid of to put it in the place that I want to put it? And it's a really nice way to think about it. I know that sounds like, that's a lot, but it is like so freeing to be looking at something and going, why do I keep moving this? Why can't I find a spot for it? And then going, oh yeah, that's right. I haven't decluttered something. I can either declutter this or I can declutter something else to make space for it. Number 9, and I would say that this one is somewhat related to saying no and some of the other things that I've talked about earlier, but just like keeping the most important things in mind when I'm trying to make decisions. So I think you'll probably notice, if you've been like listening to this list so far, that there are quite a few things like delaying purchases and not going on social media as often that are really like, one of the byproducts is that I'm really trying to slow my life down. I'm trying to slow down the decisions that contribute to me bringing more stuff into my space than I need. And I'm trying to speed up or make it really easy to get rid of the things that I no longer need. But there's also like this middle ground where I also need time to realize what's important and what things I really want to be spending my time using, doing, etc., what I want to be spending money on. So if I'm at a point where I can I've really like slowed down enough to be intentional about the things that I'm buying, I'm able to actually think about like, okay, what are the things that are important to me, first of all, and does this purchase support those things? So for example, I might be somewhere and I might see something that I really want to buy because I feel like it would make our home more comfortable when we have guests over. So think about like what things would that support? That supports like hospitality, that supports friends, and also like how much of a difference will it make having this versus not having this? Those are the kinds of things I get to think about because I'm not just buying things spontaneously. I see it, I have the idea, I think about it, and then I think, okay, how important is that versus other things? You know, one of the most recent things that I bought was a board game. I actually went halvesies with my husband on it, but I didn't have any problem spending money on that board game because first of all, the box is small and we have a place for board games, so I knew it wasn't going to become clutter, but also because that's something that we really enjoy doing together is playing games. And I knew that it would be supporting something that's important to me, which is spending time with my husband. It would also be great when we have friends over and we're practicing hospitality. And, you know, it's not necessarily like an adventure to play a game, but it does sort of get me out of my comfort zone, get me out of my head sometimes when I'm having a rough time. And so all of those things, I was like, yeah, this seems like a really good decision. And, you know, I will probably buy another board game when I can because, again, as long as we have space for it, it supports all of those things, which are really important to me. And you can do the same thing with time, you know, you can do the same thing with like budgeting, but for me, I'm really thinking about like the things, the physical things that I'm bringing into my space. And then the final small minimalist habit that can really change your life is focusing on quality over quantity when you are buying things. I think if you've, you know, consumed any minimalist content or if you are a true minimalist yourself, you'll sort of get to the point where you really appreciate good design, you really appreciate quality because you don't want to always have to be going out and buying new things. You want to buy things that will last, things that will be good in your life and that you won't be breaking and always needing to be replaced and fixed. You'd rather spend once and not have to spend again for a long time on something that you're going to use. And I'll be honest, for me, and I think for most of us, we can't always do that with everything, right? Like there are times where you just need to go to the thrift store or you need to go to Walmart and you need to get that thing that you need right now because you can't wait to buy the quality over the like cheaper stuff that you can just buy over and over and over again. And that's okay. But I think that if you pick specific areas where you can do that, you will see a big improvement in your life. So for example, my husband and I own a lot of books. And I may have a book buying problem. That's an interesting thing for a minimalist to talk about, but I might. But something that I realized is that I actually get a lot more joy from reading books that I buy at used bookstores or I buy new than I do when I go to like a thrift store or a library book sale on the last day and I spend like $1 and I buy like 10 books. You know, those are usually the books that I wasn't thinking about buying. I just kind of look at them and go, oh, maybe I'll get this. It's like 10 cents. And then I put it in a bag. Well, those are the books I end up decluttering like a year or two later because I look at them and I go, why did I think I wanted to read this? I'm never going to read this. This isn't the kind of book that I normally read. And so something I've realized is that like maybe it's worth paying a few extra dollars to buy a book that I really, really want, that really appeals to me, that I'm not going to forget about on a shelf in a dusty old corner somewhere, and that I will make use of. And that's it. Those are my 10 small minimalist habits to change your life. They've certainly changed mine, and I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to keep learning, and I would love to hear some small minimalist habits that you do in your daily life that really help you. So please leave that in the comments. And if you are interested in more minimalism content, I will link to some on one side of my head or the other, maybe both, who knows. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.